Sadly, it wasn't. A WA for the J1s?
Not really.
I would have liked it a lot more
if it was for the JC2.
Find out why in today's episode of P.
Alright, welcome back to another video. This is Xiao from VANTAGE TUTOR, a class above the rest. And for today's Prelim paper review, it is a special edition and it is from 2025 St Andrews Junior College H2 Chemistry JC1 WA1. Now before I begin, these are the questions that I feel are insightful and probably worth your time to try. And if you would like to try this paper, you're invited to join my Telegram channel where I've uploaded a short summary along with a download link on my blog. Have a go at it, let me know how it did. And yes, I have started a tuition center. It is located near Boon Keng and SAJC. Regular classes are up and running. The June crash course schedule is up and available on my Linktree. So if you're thinking whether you still need help, think no more. Join me today and I'll see you there. Firstly, this paper is not upon 30. Is about 25. And I believe if you have friends who are in SAJC, they would have told you that the last question is completely undoable for multiple reasons. But how does this paper fare in general? Let's find out via my 3 matrices. Number 1 relevance, number 2 insightfulness, number 3 difficulty, before I give an overall score and recommend to you the type of students who should try this paper. And of course, if I had a student who had to sit for this paper under exam condition, what would be a fair expectation of him from me in order for him to score an A in his actual A levels? Firstly, relevance. More or less what you expect in the WA1 in terms of the structure, a few MCQs, followed by the structured questions at the back. But if you look a bit closer at the questions, there seems to be an exponential increase in terms of difficulty for the section B part. And that means, if you compare it to your revision package, it may not be the most similar. In fact, this paper can be compared to an A-level paper. And there are multiple instances of that. Number 1, if you talk about the relative abundance, it's not in terms of percentage and therefore it's going to exceed 100 and therefore it requires a different way of solving. Have we seen this before? Yes, in your 10-year series, in your MCQ. If you watch my prelim paper review special of last year's A-level H2 Chemistry Paper 1, some of the students say that this was one of the key questions that caught students' eyes. And to be frank, as a JC1, I can forgive you if you don't know how to solve this, unless your teacher specifically prepared you for that. Beyond that, if you look at other parts of the paper where they ask you about the electronic configuration or strontium, I just feel it's a bit out of place because most of the time when you talk about atomic structure in your A levels as well, we just stop at period 4. But ultimately, some of you will still be able to solve it if you understand how to use the periodic table. And then last but not least, the last question, the environmental chemistry question, more relevant for the JC2 than the JC1. And in fact, if any of you can solve this, I'll be truly impressed and you definitely score an A on this paper. And for the rest of the questions, it's mostly what you expect, and hence the relevance of this paper balancing both. Even though they have taken the key elements of an A-level paper in terms of some of the more creative questions, but for a JC1 WA1, it may seem to have drifted a bit. Balancing everything, the relevance of this paper would be given a somewhat average 6.5 out of 10. Next, insightfulness. They have taken some of the most creative questions from the A-level paper, maybe in the MCQ, and translated it into a structured question and created a very holistic kind of question in the form of mainly question 1. And like I said in every prelim paper review, I'm looking for an anchor question, I'm looking for application question, and this paper certainly has fulfilled that. They have an anchor question where they discuss very extensively about strontium, from the atomic structure to angle of deflection, and then calculation of abundance and potentially more. And then in terms of application, they have the environmental chemistry part where they talk about parts per billion and parts per million, which I personally don't believe is a key feature in your A levels. But I can see why a lot of teachers want to at least expose their students to that. And in terms of solving a lot of the questions here, I don't see them as the most insightful, but I can see some small details here and there. Most of the insights of this paper comes from the question that they presented to you, even though some of the questions I may not agree with, especially given that they are only JC1s and this WA1, but it cannot be denied. There is a lot of creativity, there is a lot of thought, there is a lot of deliberation when it comes to setting this paper, and hence the insightfulness of this paper would have to be given a rather spectacular 9 out of 10. Next, difficulty. A lot of students complained that this paper was difficult to complete, and I can see why. The first 75% of the paper was rather tedious, especially in question 1. It is really very extensive and it goes very deep. And then when you eventually get to the last question where you see something that is completely unfamiliar to you, parts per billion, parts per million, naturally with fatigue setting in, it's likely that you just give up on the last question. And that's why, according to my student, a lot of you decided to just not do the 5 marks. And I can forgive that. But what's more important is whether you can do the questions about ionization energy in both your MCQ and your section B, and of course scoring majority of your marks in question 1 and the mole and redox question. Those questions, even though they could be long, they could require a bit more thought, they could require a sharper eye, but ultimately, if you do not panic in the exams, they are still doable. But then I get it. You're only a JC1, this is your first WA, a lot of this will feel like an uphill challenge to you, and to be honest, I will feel this paper is more relevant to be given to a JC2 as topical revision. And hence, to be fair to the JC1, I understand your pain. Technically, whatever you scored, this should have been upon 25 and not 30. And hence, the difficulty of this paper would have to be given a more than solid, and to some of you, unfair, 8.5 out of 10. Overall, I like this paper, but not for the JC1, mainly for the JC2. And I've said that multiple times in this video where they have tried to set the questions a bit more creatively with reference to the A-level 10-year series, but at the same time, the difficulty feels a bit out of place. And maybe what the teachers are trying to do is trying to show you what an A-level standard could be like. But then again, I understand you are only JC1, this is your first WA, you're expecting something fair, and there are fair elements in this paper, and if you have done decently well for the reasonable questions, you would expect to pass. And I believe you have passed. But in terms of scoring A, I think it's an uphill challenge. I don't think an ordinary student would be able to do it. But really, not the most fair, nor is it the most suitable paper for a first WA given to a JC1, and hence the overall score of this paper, not to my liking, not to my taste for a JC1, but a very good paper for a JC2. You'll be given a somewhat decent score, 5.5 out of 10. And if I had a student who had to sit for this paper under exam condition, a fair expectation of him would be 60% in order for him to score an A in his actual A levels. Finally, I recommend this paper to JC2 because like I said, a lot of these questions go deep, they go hard, it requires a lot more thinking, and when you're JC2, you're more than experienced, you're more than well versed, and you know that a lot of these topics are hardly appearing in your revision packages anymore because all these are your foundational topics, and if you really want an extensive revision on this fundamental topic, this paper will be perfect for you. However, in terms of JC1, who should use this paper as a revision? Only the top performers. Because honestly, this WA1 is so-called a prelim standard, at least to me, given that you only learn H2 chemistry for, what, 2 months? And hence, if you are a JC1 who is clearly a class above the rest, or if you are a JC2 who's looking to do intensive revision on the smaller topics in JC1, your foundational topics, this paper would be for you. Alright, so we have come to the end of this prelim paper review of 2025 St Andrews Junior College H2 Chemistry JC1 WA1. Now if you like what I'm doing, follow me on TikTok, like my video, comment and share with your friends. I'm sure this will help them because ultimately I'm on my way to 10,000 followers. And if you would like to try this paper, you're invited to join my Telegram channel where I've uploaded a short summary along with a download link on my blog. Have a go at it, let me know how you did. And yes, I have started a tuition center. It is located near Boon King and SAJC. Regular classes are up and running. The crash course schedule for the JC1 are available on my Linktree. So if you're wondering if you need help, think no more, sign up today and I'll see you there. Nothing else. This is Yao from VANTAGE Tutor, a class above the rest. Take care.